The big news of the day, the White Sox have traded Garrett Crochet. We all pretty much knew it was coming. The Red Sox have been the team that have been one of the big teams mentioned, the hottest rumors out there. And the White Sox get prospects in return. It's very similar to the Chris Sale deal, except, on paper, probably the deal that the White Sox made with the Red Sox for Chris Sale several years ago. Yoan Moncada was, I believe at the time, the number one overall rated prospect in all of baseball. Michael Kopech was very highly rated as well as a pitcher. Teams don't trade their top prospect anymore. They save their prospects even for 26-year-old potential ace pitchers. It's why I don't love trading a guy like Garrett Crochet, who, again, is only 26 years old, doesn't have a lot of mileage on the arm, and still had 2 years of cost control. Now, he is going to cost you a lot of money in 2 years. But as Passan and the other baseball bigwigs have put it, the Red Sox are going to get to work on an extension soon. I have always proposed to the White Sox to get creative. They're going to have very little money on the books. So why not, in these years, especially front-loaded deal, while you're rebuilding, and pay him? This should be a guy who is the essence of who you build around on your next great White Sox team at 26 years old, not a guy that you trade away. Like when someone just tweeted me and saying, I'll read the exact tweet. He said, Josh Schaefer said, "You always whine Chicago sports teams don't sell high." Well, they did this time on a guy who hasn't even done it for an entire year and has an injury history. Plenty of areas to rip the Sox. This isn't one of them, though. Again, you're cashing in a left-handed stud who throws 100 miles an hour and strikes out a ton of guys. Still not perfect, but you have control of him for 2 more years, and these are lotto tickets. I don't understand why, with his age, you wouldn't want to build around Garrett Crochet and continue to keep him and try to get more players like him. If he was 29 or 30, I'd understand this. This isn't a player, in my opinion, that you had to get rid of.
I take the conversation we had a little bit earlier when Waddle and Carmen were still here, and my rosy feeling that I had for the White Sox trying to win 63 games, this team's a long way away. The White Sox are a long way away from doing anything. I think what they're looking for, and this is just me guessing, I'm not saying the White Sox are right or wrong. What they're looking for is we've got one guy that can do it. He's got an ERA plus of 128 in his career. Well, all the limited stuff he had, with all the injuries, with all the problems, with all this, with all that, still gave you a 128 ERA plus, which is pretty darn good. You'd like to have a player like that on your team. I think they've got more holes and they've got more problems in their pitching staff than holding on to one guy that is probably going to be able to be there for you, lefty, dynamic, that type of pitcher, even though he wasn't as established as Chris Sale was. Chris Sale had a long history of being exceptional, and that's why you were able to go ahead and cash in on Chris Sale as opposed to the cashing in on Garrett Crochet. But you're hoping 2 of the 4 maybe produce for you, come to the big leagues and make something happen and become part of something in 3 years. This team ain't going to be good for 3 years. The White Sox were even at 63 or 63 and 99, and I am being ultra rosy with what I think the White Sox can do this year.
But then he's
That's
29.
Still a long way away.
He's 29 years old. So
29 years old and making a lot of money.
Yeah, so?
That's not what they like.
And isn't that the problem?
They're trying to. Well, that's welcome to the Chicago White Sox. Mm-hmm. The Chicago White Sox have done it both ways. They've spent some money and have not gone to the playoffs. They've not spent money and not gone to the playoffs. They've done it both ways. They've not gone to the playoffs both ways. I think the owner is in a situation now where he'd just prefer to give you the hint that one day we'll be competitive again. But this year, the White Sox plan on cashing in on the 2005 World Series. That's what they plan on doing. They plan on bringing back all the guys Every series, you're going to see somebody new in here. Jermaine Dye will be coming back. Joe Creedy will be coming back. Jermaine Dye. I mean, everybody. Aaron Rowan out in center field. Aguchi will be coming. Cliff Polite. We got Polite. Everybody's coming back. We're going to feel good about 05 again. 20 years later, 05. That's what they're banking on. They're not banking on the product on the field. They know the product on the field's not going to be good. So they're going to get you, they're going to have the fireworks. Woo, look at the fireworks. Bring your dogs here. Flying Elvis night. They're going to focus on everything but the baseball this year. So why would they want to eventually end up paying somebody? They want to bring that payroll down to $35 million if they can.
It's Chicago, $35 million payroll.
$35 million is what they're trying to do. Get it down as far as they possibly can and have no long-term commitments to anybody.
Yeah, Meller, you're the Sox fan. What it bothers me because it insults my intelligence is, and I'm a Cubs fan, and I'm not a hater Cubs fan. This has really bothered me because what's the best case scenario? They put together a good team in 5 years, and then whoever is flourishing, they ultimately spin them off then next. Like, who's the last guy that they got and then ended up paying and that they kept? And he became a really good player. So this is what I mean. Like, this is a build around.
Tim Anderson counts.
But that didn't
I know.
last long,
I'm stretching.
right?
I'm trying to think of like homegrown players who the White Sox have signed to long-term deals.
Or acquired in a deal like this, where he was a prospect and then grown from a prospect. Like, you're just banking on. And I'm always been pro rebuild. I'm for pro rebuild. But to me, you told me teams are very unwilling to give up now their top prospects like they were back even 5 years ago.
Yeah, that's
in these deals. So why would a team be willing to give up a 26-year-old stud on the major league level? Like a 23-year-old prospect who is unproven is more valuable than a 26-year-old proven guy who's still cheap. This guy to me could be so good for so long. And I know there's always an injury possibility, but I just think that you could get creative with a deal now, pay him, and build around him and get the rebuild off the ground faster with him.
Yeah, like he's proven at least last season. So take that for what it's worth. I understand pitching. It's always kind of like a ticking time bomb. You never know when the arm might blow up something in the arm and all of a sudden there's surgery, but that's the nature of starting pitching. I think Garrett Crochet, what he showed you last year, is he's a frontline starter that you could bank on, and you're always chasing that. The moment the White Sox traded Chris Sale away, that was kind of the point when they traded him was that, okay, you trade Sale, but you better make sure that you get it right because you're immediately trying to replace him. The White Sox have been selling hope from the farm system with players like Colson Montgomery, who last year was an absolute disaster. Like he's supposed to be the future that you're banking on. He was supposed to be up by the end of last season. He played so poorly, though, at Birmingham in the minor leagues that he couldn't even really make an appearance at the end of the season because it wasn't worth their while at that point. He hadn't proven enough. They're telling us White Sox fans that Hagen Smith, Noah Schultz, their two highly touted left-handed pitchers in the minors are the reason that you can be excited for the future here. But the reality is, so you've just traded. Like, I could maybe buy that if they're paired with Garrett Crochet. But now you need to replace Garrett Crochet. This is a 121-loss team that is actually, on paper, looks like it's worse. I said this last year multiple times. It was staggering that they were losing 121 games when they were getting the type of pitching that they were getting from Crochet and Eric Fetty. Like, it was kind of mind-boggling. And now you've jettisoned your best couple of starters from last year, and Mike Tauchman has been brought in. He's a 34-year-old who I don't get that deal at all. What is that?
It's just a body to play the field to the hometown kid who maybe would want to stay in Chicago. And for what did they pay him? $1.5 million?
I know, but he's 34 years old. I know.
And then maybe they could flip him at the deadline if he's having a good year.
And that's the other point.
Cheap.
Why should White Sox fans trust now trading away Garrett Crochet? Why should you trust Chris Getz and the White Sox organization, which, if you follow this team closely, like around baseball, when it comes to the advanced scouting, the advanced analytics, they are probably the worst franchise in baseball. They're behind the eight ball when it comes to that. And so now their scouting needs to come through when it comes to trading your best player on the roster. And I wonder if Garrett Crochet hadn't gone about at the trade deadline the way he did, where he made it known through his agent that he wanted an extension if he was going to be traded last year. He basically said, I'm not going to push myself innings-wise to a place I've never been if I
don't get a new deal.
And I'm not going to come out of the bullpen either. He basically made it hard on the White Sox. Had he not done that, would the White Sox be looking to trade him this winter? That basically made it fait accompli. So it feels like not just that they're trying to rebuild this roster, but also that they're kind of petty with the way it was the way it was pushed on them.
312-332-3776. I got a poll question out there. Yurko always likes my poll question.
Yeah, I hope you finished that.
We have 1,300 votes on it. You could vote at Waddle and Sylvie. It's brought to you by your local Chicagoland Toyota dealers. Did the White Sox make the right move by trading Garrett Crochet? It sounded like you said yes, Yerk, that you were okay with this.
Yeah, I'm all right with it because I've got zero expectations for the Chicago White Sox. I understand what they're trying to do marketing-wise with the 2005 team and the 2025. You can't go into Bridgeport and sit down at any one of the coffee shops and or one of the lunch stops that you might have out there and talk to any White Sox fans that has any expectations for this year. They understand what their team is doing. They're not happy with it, but they understand that their team has no expectations, no goals, no nothing, than just to do this thing right now as inexpensively as possible and try to get as many young players in here that will in 3, 4, or 5 years be able to rebuild this team into something.
The majority are with you, not with Meller and me. 58.9% say yes, the White Sox did the right move. No is getting 41.1%. It also bothers me, too, that the narrative changes, too. Chris Getz got the job originally because Jerry Reinsdorf said, we don't want to waste a year. This is not going to be a long-term rebuild. This is going to be done quickly. This is going to be done soon. And the reason why Chris Getz, and we're not interviewing anybody, is because Chris Getz is most familiar with what we have. And that's why we're not bringing anyone in. Chris Getz told us a year ago when we first had him on the radio station, guys, this isn't going to be a long-term rebuild. Now, a year later, it's like the longest term rebuild ever.
Yes.
Opening day, Waddle and I did the show after Garrett Crochet pitched, and they lost the game. I think it was 1-0. And we said, look, they didn't win, but this was a win today because Garrett Crochet in his first start, back as a starter, was unbelievable. And we're like, this is a great starting point for a somewhat rebuilding team. So now you went from, hey, let's see what Garrett Crochet can do as a starter, to let's get rid of him for another catching prospect and a couple more lottery tickets. I don't know if you're maximizing this, and I think the narrative's changing, and I don't trust that they're ever going to get it right. And we're just continue to kick the can down the road, and any other good player they're going to get, they're just going to say, well, let's sell them because we're not close to winning anyway.
Just quickly so we understand exactly what they're going. Their adjusted payroll last year was $132.5 million. That's where they were. Here's where they're heading, just so you've got a positive thought where you're at. They're currently at 43.8 with an estimation that they're, with the full 40-man, whatever they've got to allocate to that salary cap, they're going to be at 65. They're going to be less than half of what they were last year. That's where they're headed, whether anybody likes it or not. And anybody else they could unload off that team that is making a ton of money, be it Lewis Robert or Benintendi, if they can get rid of those two guys and they can bring that all the way down to $35 million, that's what the White Sox goal is. Anybody that doesn't look at this and doesn't understand exactly what direction they're going, that's where they're heading.
Could they be lowering the payroll so low so they could sell the team?
That would be a best-case scenario for any White Sox fan out there. That'd be a best-case scenario for any White Sox fan out there.
Is that what teams do? Do they entice an owner with a better team?
Well, okay, it's a cross-sport reference here, but the Boston Celtics just paid a ton of money and then put the team up for sale.
Yeah, but they were good already. Do you know what I'm saying? They were already good, so it's not like the Sox are gonna get good.
The Twins have made some signings lately, and they're up for sale.
Yeah, like I don't think anything on the White Sox roster right now does anything to entice an ownership group. They're buying the asset.
So you might as well bottom out. I don't know anything, but there were rumblings. I don't know if the rumblings before that though were just Jerry trying to create leverage for a new stadium, which would be silly.
I'll say this, I think the way this organization has been run under the entire Jerry Reinsdorf ownership group, you know that they're not going to pay pitching. And so the truth is that assuming that that's how they were going to approach Garrett Crochet no matter what, then yes, this is probably the prudent move because you have a couple of years of control, so you cash in now while you can. There's no reason, though, you need to run your business that way. You could certainly try to sign a legitimate pitcher who's proven himself as a frontline starter at this point in Major League Baseball. I think, too, when you look at the landscape of baseball, and this is what I was talking to you about earlier, Sylvie, about teams just don't trade their elite-level prospects anymore. That's why the best the White Sox could probably get was the fourth best prospect in the Red Sox system. You go back to when they traded Chris Sale away. They got the Red Sox top two prospects in Kopech and Moncada. And you mentioned it, and you were right. Moncada was the top-rated prospect in baseball at that time. How did that work out for the White Sox? They got the Red Sox best two prospects. The Red Sox got Chris Sale.
And won a World Series.
And Chris Sale, by the way, had Tommy John surgery. And who still got the better end of that deal?
Of course.
I would venture to say almost everybody would tell you the way Kopech played, the way Moncada played here, that the Red Sox far and away got the better end of that deal.
Yeah. Tyler and Skokie. Tyler, you're on Waddle and Sylvie Yurko filling in. What's up, Tyler?
It's Howard. I don't know. He thought my name was Tyler, but
Howard?
It's okay.
Well, he put his own name. Sometimes that screws around.
Happens.
He loves himself some him, so
It's
he's calling
okay.
everyone Tyler.
Tyler's Tyler.
It's okay as long as he doesn't buy himself some Viagra for himself. It's a good thing. Or two.
This is Howard and Skokie. Are you under the weather?
Just allergies, but thank God, no complaints. The White Sox made the right move. You have a 120 loss team, 121 loss. Keeping Crochet for 2 years maybe gets you to 65 wins, and then you got to pay him, and you're taking the chance he blows out his elbow. I had spoken to my friend who was one of the owners of the Marlins, and he said the White Sox did the exact correct move. He said you sell high, you don't know what the prospects are, but with this team, you ain't going anywhere. Your hope is to go for somewhere in 28, and in 28, Crochet won't be here. Regardless.
Howard.
Howard's with me.
But my point was, I would never let him get to free agency in 2 years. I would have said to you, like you said about the payroll at $50 million or whatever it is. You were at 130 last year. Is that what you told me?
135.
So you were paying 135 last year to set the record with the most losses ever. Be it 100 this year. Shave off 32, whatever it is, and pay him $45 million this year, and sign him to a 5 or 6 year extension now when he's in the prime of his career. Go to the pay early, 2 years early, and pay him $40 million a year. And that way, it's win for him. It's win for the Sox. You have him for the long term, and now he's the centerpiece of your rebuild.
No, by the way, I will say this: if you're actually right about Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith, your top two starting pitching prospects, all of a sudden you would have had 3 really dominant lefty pitchers in your rotation. The quickest way to get better fast is to have elite level pitching because it's hard to find the hitters. But if you can hit on those pitching prospects, all of a sudden you've got 3/5 of your rotation set. If you add those to Crochet.
Why shouldn't Jerry pay now? Why should he go down to $35 million? Why should he go down to $50? Why can't you pay Garrett Crochet early and still pay $90 million on your payroll and front-load a deal to Garrett Crochet now? Get creative. Gary on the south side, you're on ESPN 1000. What's up, Gary?
Hey, so I think it's the absolute right move to make this deal for Crochet. You're talking about a pitcher that has only pitched over 100 or over 80 innings one time in his entire life. Even in college, he never even passed 70, 80 innings. And you're getting a really good return with, 4 top 15 prospects out of that system. And that's the best way that the Sox are going to be able to move forward and build a team. because they can't build through the draft. It's been proven time after time, and they can't build through free agency. And trying to extend that guy, I think, is a ticking time bomb with the injuries. And you're talking about a team that's never extended really players ever. So I don't really see any other way to build.
Yeah, that's the problem. But Gary, look, you bring up valid White Sox points, and it's what Yurko talked about too. It's the White Sox. Welcome to the White Sox.